Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today. We're joining returning guest is Jeffrey Hussey. He's an attorney down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, with the Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida. Mr. Hussey, are you there?
I am here, and I'm actually based in Orlando.
So we're here to talk about, evictions, looming evictions across the country. Why don't you tell us first about your organization here, the Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida?
We are a nonprofit legal aid law firm that we provide free legal services to low-income clients throughout Central Florida. We handle landlord-tenant issues, which is a real big issue right now, family law issues, we assist veterans. We don't do personal injury or criminal law or things like that, but the things that are really affecting people's lives on a day-to-day basis, we're there to help them see through the process and get equal access to courts, because most people low income don't have access to legal services, and the big boys do.
Yeah, that's so true. I've been looking at some of these responses online to the evictions, and some of these people are just they write these handwritten motions. It's just so sad.
Absolutely.
It's heartbreaking. They're just up against an army on the other side. So we're facing these looming evictions right around the corner. What can you tell us about that?
We are facing a crisis at some point in time. Right now, they're saying that come January 1st, 2021, that there will be nearly 30 to 40 million people who are at risk of being evicted. And that's analysis from the Aspen Institute. And they're saying that right now, 29 to 43% of renter households are at risk of eviction.
Really?
So that is a huge number. You look at the unemployment numbers, and people have lost their jobs during this pandemic, and they just have not been able to keep up with all the bills with the limited amount of savings that they have.
What if a person's facing eviction right now, or they've already been served? What can they do to respond?
Right now, nationwide, you are protected by, we call it the CDC moratorium. In Florida, we had some protections that were entered by Governor DeSantis, but he let those expire when this new CDC moratorium came along. And this was issued by the Centers for Disease Control back in September. And it was an order to temporarily halt residential evictions only of certain individuals for non-payment of rent through December 31st of 2020. And basically they did this on the theory that we need to keep people in their homes to prevent the spread of COVID-19 because a lot of these renters would be sick or at high risk, and they need to be quarantined in their home. So that order is in place now all across the country, but it expires on December 31st, 2020.
But if someone got an eviction, say December 1st, 30-day notice, they can go to the CDC website, download that, get it notarized, and serve that on their landlord.
Absolutely. It doesn't even have to be notarized. For the CDC declaration, basically these are the requirements that the CDC has laid out for you to be protected by it. You have to use all your best efforts to obtain all available government assistance for renter housing. The individual expects to earn no more than $99,000 in annual income for the 2020 calendar year, or no more than $198,000 if you're filing a joint tax return. Was not required to report any income in 2019 to the U.S. Internal Revenue Service or receive an economic impact payment, the stimulus check. If you're unable to pay your full rent or make a full housing payment due to substantial loss of household income, loss of compensable hours of work or wages, a layoff, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses, and the individual is using their best efforts to make timely partial payments that are close to the full payment as individual circumstances may prevent, taking into account other non-discretionary expenses, and the eviction would likely render the individual homeless or force the individual to move into and live in close quarters in a new or shared living setting because the individual has no other available housing options. That's the language that's specific in the statement that you are signing that's on the CDC website. But once you sign that, if you've already are in the process of a court proceeding, if you got served, let's say already with an eviction complaint, you need to sign that and you need to get it in your court file. If your landlord has not evicted you yet, but you know you're behind in your rent, you need to provide that declaration to your landlord, certifying all of those statements. And that gives you the protection. And if the landlord goes ahead and tries to file an eviction action against you, then you would want to then file that in the courts as part of your answer.
Now, the thing is, when I was talking down there to the clerk down there at the court, they said, you should reply with more than just, well, hey, here's my CDC letter. You should file a motion for a hearing, question, challenge something in order to get a hearing. What do you say about that?
And one thing that needs to be clear is no matter where you are in the country, you cannot be forced out of your home if you're renting without going through the court system. A landlord can't do self-help, and that is to protect your due process right. And the first step in the court proceeding is you get served with a complaint. And in Florida, I can only speak to the Florida timeline, you have 5 days to respond. And basically we call that your answer. So if you had defenses, then that is when you would want to raise those defenses. And one of those defenses, if you filed the CDC declaration, would be the tenant would want to raise that, saying that, I got served with this eviction. However, I served my landlord with the CDC declaration, and therefore this eviction should be put on hold or stay, as that's the legal term for it. But if you do absolutely nothing, then you're not protected by that CDC declaration, and the court can move forward with getting a final judgment against you and ultimately a writ of possession, which is the final step in an eviction, that the sheriff will come serve on you and you'd have 24 hours to vacate your residence. So if you file your answer, the court proceeding is when a tenant files their answer and they raise valid defenses, then a hearing can be set so the judge can hear those defenses and make a determination as to basically who wins. Does the landlord win or does the tenant win?
That's so important that people hear that, especially here in Florida where people aren't, they're not that savvy, they're not that kind of savvy with the legal process. In other states like California, New York, you can stay, you can fight in landlord tenant court for 6 months.
Right.
And here where I live,
Florida is a quick turnaround.
Oh yeah,
5 days. Since we're legal aid, we get the calls on the landlord tenant quite often, and unfortunately, a lot of times people wait until the 7th day to call us. And what happens is that, the court has what's called a default mechanism, where if you don't respond by those 5 days, then they can issue a default. And that means you lose. You don't get your day in court, you get nothing. And then the landlord can proceed to try and get you out. Now, sometimes there's procedural grounds that we can raise on people's behalf to get that default set aside. But if it doesn't get aside, and then the real tragic ones are the people who call us after they get that writ of possession served. And it's a rare occasion that we can get that writ overturned. We have, but it's not a common practice. And we had the unfortunate task of telling people, you have 24 hours. You need to prioritize what you want out of your apartment or your house, and you need to find some emergency housing within the next 24 hours. And that's a hard conversation to have, but in Florida, that is the reality.
Yeah, and just imagine, too, a lot of times these people are elderly, or they're infirmed, and they can't move themselves. They have to come up with people to move for them and a place to put their possessions. And it's just heartbreaking. But here...
I've had those... Unfortunately, I've had those cases.
Well, I've seen... Nevada's the same way, and I've driven by some of these places where all their possessions are out in the street. Their loaf of bread is on top of a box of clothing and a stack of furniture.
And a lot of times, if they're in the senior facilities, then it becomes a free-for-all.
Yeah, right.
And people are rifling through these people's lifelong possessions. I've sat in clients' apartments that unfortunately they have no defenses to their eviction action, and I look around and I see a lifetime of treasures.
Yeah. And
it breaks my heart because you have to tell them, figure out what's the most important. We'll try and buy you some more time with the landlord to get all your stuff out. But a lot of times they're just heartless people out there, and they want that unit empty, and they want to put someone in there to start collecting rent again.
Well, that's another thing, too, because I look around my apartment complex here, and there's empty units that have been empty for months. And still, they went around back in September with this 30-day notice. And many people, once they received that 30-day notice, they didn't know that they could file the CDC form. They left that week in fear that somehow they were being forced out just by the landlord handing a piece of paper, not even the sheriff coming and serving them with a summons.
Yeah, and one study that I saw, he said that only about 10% of people involved in evictions, the tenants, have a lawyer, and that's fighting against 9 out of 10 landlords have a lawyer representing them. They know the ins and outs of the court system, and if you're a layperson, and we deal with indigent people. A lot of them don't have access to computers. They can't even go do their own research. Especially when the pandemic first hit, a lot of people's only access to computers was going down to the library, and the libraries were closed. And even now, it's not open. Libraries aren't open like they used to be, and there's certain time limits that you can spend on the computers, and a limited number of people to get on computers. So, it's a double whammy because they don't have. Since they're low income, they don't have access to the technology as well, and it just makes it real tough. It's a real tough situation out there.
Yeah, when I was looking around here in Manatee County, Sarasota area, there aren't many paralegals that can even help you write up a motion down here. No. It's
it is tough. If you can't pay your rent, the chances are most lawyers are going to at least want some type of retainer agreement, and they want some money up front if they're going to do legal services for you. Unless you get to a legal aid, most people aren't going to have the money to be able to afford a lawyer.
Yeah.
The lawyer may even want $500, and that's $500 that people don't have. And that's why we there are legal aids throughout the state of Florida, throughout the country, and if you've lost your job and you don't have income and you're facing a housing issue, you really need to get to the legal aid organization, because that's our sole mission, is to help those who don't have access to lawyers.
Now, with your organization, the Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida, how poor, how desperate do you have to be that you will accept a client to come in, you'll help them?
It's based on what's called the average median income level,
okay.
And it's basically just it's not the lowest of low. I mean, there are ways that we have many grants, and if your income is a little bit too high to qualify